Since we know that we believe things for safety and not truth, I'd say the number one hiding place for people's repressed emotions is in their level of faith. And this could be faith in anything, by the way. Religion, science, spirituality, philosophy, other people, political or social ideas. The stronger the faith and the conviction in these things, the more likely it is that you have repressed emotions in the body that you're trying to avoid feeling and expressing. Carl Jung said fanaticism is a sign of repressed doubt. And doubt is a product of emotional repression. Think about it, if we buried what we feel in the body, then we can't trust ourselves or our experience anymore. So like a child, we have to start referring out, which means we have to start taking in things from the outside, believing them and having faith as a substitute for being ourselves. And look, you don't have to take my or anyone's word for it. You can test and check for yourself. There's a couple ways to do this. The first is the most common. You can get triggered. When you're emotionally triggered, it means that some belief or identity has been activated or challenged in your system. And the reason it feels like there's suffering involved in that is because the buried emotions underneath that belief or identity have been provoked or prodded. And this should be evidence enough that, as Byron Katie says, when you're suffering, you're thinking and believing something that's not true. Well, we would take that a little bit further and say, you're thinking and believing something that's not true so that you don't have to feel and express what is true, which of course are your buried childhood emotions like anger or hurt. The second thing you can do to verify that what I'm saying checks out is watch a really young child. Notice how emotionally available they are, how present. Notice how they're being themselves like all the time. The only reason that has to change is because in order to stay safe and get love, that child has to start believing things. It's compelled to start having faith. And the third thing you can do is the least common, but probably the most effective for ending suffering. You can deprogram and reverse your own repression. It sounds like an insane prospect to most people, I'm sure, but if you've suffered enough, it's really appealing. So the idea is we want to challenge any and all of our own beliefs, ideas, opinions, positions, and worldviews in order to access and clear the body of the buried repressed emotions that have been there since childhood. This ends suffering because those buried emotions are the drivers of almost all forms of suffering. So in a way, if you've had enough of living a repressed life and all the suffering that comes along with it, we can help you have a crisis of faith, or we can aid you in losing your religion, as REM would say, whatever that religion might be. There's a lot of freedom to be had in this work. And this is really important. If you're not in this place and your faith is still working for you, by all means do that. Don't even give another thought to what we're saying here. Just disregard it completely. The reason I say this is because once you hear enough of this context and start the Killer Bee inquiries, it's sort of like initiating the end of your own world. So if you're not in a place where you're ready for that or that you really want to do that, we suggest that you just don't even start. It would be a little bit like someone who's not an alcoholic or isn't done drinking yet, coming to AA, to meetings every day, getting a sponsor, working the steps. You know, it could get tricky and messy. And frankly, why would anyone want to put themselves through that to begin with if it's not what you want? My experience is until we truly want to address our own unconsciousness as much, if not more so than other people's, freedom from suffering is out of the question. But if you are ready to lose your religion or your faith or your philosophy or your affiliation or your worldview, visit repressiontest.com.